Good morning. We are live on a Monday morning and it's hot as Hades outside. I was going to say it's beautiful. I guess the sun is shining and the flowers are blooming, but mine are all dead on my back porch. So that's really sad. We are ASMM, Small Business Connections, and we're the podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. The idea is we bring in entrepreneurs who are going to tell you what they've learned by building their businesses so that you don't have to always learn the hard way. So that maybe you learn something and you say, oh yeah, Josh told me that. I remember that. So we're going to give you some of that today. We're on episode 58 and we are streaming live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. We're also going to pull the audio from this. So if you're listening to this, you probably can't ask us questions. If you're watching this, you can ask us questions. We want to encourage that. You've got experts in the room. If they say something that you're like, wait a second, I'm not doing that. Or wait a second, how do I do that? Ask the question. The other thing is this is a really great time to give us a shameless plug. Say, hi, I'm Ann from ASMM Digital Marketing. What I do is market for small businesses, and I have a question. So give yourself a shameless plug if you can, because we're here for you as entrepreneurs. So our guest today is Dr. Josh Funk from Rehab to Perform, and he's actually from my neck of the woods because I've moved out to the Chevy Chase area, and that's how we met. Hey, Josh, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. Good morning, everybody.
So can you tell us a little bit about you and what you're doing at Rehab to Perform?
Yeah, I have been the owner of Rehab to Perform for a little over 5 years now. Came upon PT while going through a sports injury during my time as a lacrosse athlete at Ohio State. Really just fell in love with what I saw was a little bit more of a synergistic model to handling injuries, where I went from the athletic training tables, working with an ATC, the athletic trainer, or a physical therapist, and hand in hand, then working with a physician at one end of the spectrum, and then our strength coach and sport coaches at the other end of the spectrum. So that's where I started to look at the marketplace and really just not see anything that presented physical therapy as a profession and really what it should be, which is this central transition point between the injured or sickness end of the spectrum to wellness or health. So working at a few other places before starting up my own place, which started up in Frederick, Maryland, in between two sports fields at Frederick Indoor Sports Center. Eventually, we found we had a viable product, and here we are with 4 brick and mortars and hopefully 5 and 6 within the next couple months here.
That is amazing. That the growth there is amazing. And actually, we'll talk about that in a little bit, how you handle that growth. So, and we'll also, I want to say, I did Ironman, I completed Ironman, but over the years, you have an injury, you get injured, you get better through physical therapy, you go on and you get injured again. And you're right, that part is missing, that part of saying, okay, but you don't have to. So I love your model. I think it's a really, really good model. So we're going to switch gears right now and talk about business and how you run your business. And I wanted to talk about this one first, the intentional inclusivity. So can you tell me a little more about how you do this and why it matters?
Yeah, I mean, I think admittedly, this is something I got exposed in the book Conscious Capitalism a couple years ago. I highly recommend that book for anybody who is in a more entrepreneurial role. It really presents a different take on capitalism, because I think sometimes people hear the word capitalism and automatically associate it with a 4-letter word. And getting to the intentional inclusivity side of things, I think it could tie into obviously what's going on right now. But being that it's something that we've incorporated in our company for some time now, it takes you from the awareness end of the spectrum, where you're aware that there are things you can do to create a more inclusive environment. And then you become intentional, then you become strategic. And then at some point, you have a culture of inclusivity. So I think for us, being mindful of 2 big areas, one, gender specific inclusivity, and then this ethnic and racial end of the inclusivity conversation. So trying to do certain things to present a an environment that is inclusive with regards to the people that it serves, and then also working towards a healthcare system that is more of a representation of our population. And that's something that's been a little bit challenging from a healthcare standpoint. If I just took one stat in particular, but 3% of DPT students would identify as a Black male or Black female. So that being something where you have to do certain things to even recruit a staff that might be more inclusive. But I think it really goes, and we could probably talk for a lot longer time about this, but it really goes to high school initiatives, middle school initiatives, and providing opportunities for young people to see themselves within the healthcare profession in some of these more educationally demanding roles.
That's great. And, you know, I'm just thinking about this. You have these young athletes that come in. Unfortunately, there's a lot of young athletes who come in, right? Because they're playing the sports more often. Of course, I feel so bad for all of them right now because they're not playing sports as much as they have in the past, but they generally play sports year round. And so you see a lot of them. It gives you an opportunity to speak to them and let them know what you do. So that's kind of a neat position you're in.
Yes.
That you can inspire that.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a lot of students go through the process of physical rehab with us, and then actually come back for college internships, and some even internships as DPT students. We have a fairly comprehensive internship program that spans from high school to college to those Doctor of Physical Therapy clinical rotations. So it's nice to see an initial touch point, much like mine, to the field of PT come full circle where there's interest in this as a career.
That's really great. I also want to go back to something that this is something that touches me, the awareness part. I think so often these days we're talking about, we basically want to skip that part altogether. Mm-hmm. Instead of, I think we heard a lot, silence is violence. It made me, I was like hesitant, because if we say that, do we give people a chance to think about where they are in that and where you stand? Right. So I think it is something that you need to think about. You know, the awareness, not being pushed into saying something that you haven't thought, well, wait a second, am I part of the problem first? Right.
Yeah. And I think statements like that can be a little bit counterproductive, especially if you just view like social media posts. Sometimes people put way too much weight into social media posts. Like, just because you're doing a social media post and you're active on social media doesn't mean necessarily that you're doing a ton of things offline. So I do think that there's a balance there, assuming that because somebody wasn't overly involved in social media posting at that time or moving forward, it is tied to the fact that they're not doing anything offline. I think that assumption can be a little bit troublesome. But yeah, I mean, for us, when you talk about things that are going on associated with basic human rights, especially in terms of racial divides in the country, doing things to get strategic as quickly as possible, I think, is where we should all be. We have awareness that was either created before that or as a result of some of the events that have gone on over the past weeks or months. And it's extremely important that we are now carrying that over into something meaningful, something tangible, that is ideally measurable. I mean, when we're talking about some of the initiatives that we want within our company, it is changing the makeup of our interns. So if we can do certain things to make sure that we are having an internship program that is more diverse, we know that initiatives have led to a specific result that is contributing to something greater within society. And I know that that will allow us to have a much easier process, especially when I think over 50, and I think it's 53% of our clinical staff came from our internship program. It's going to make the recruitment of a more diverse team, because we are diverse from a clerical side or behind the scenes team. But it's going to make that recruitment of the clinical team that much more authentic, and I would say just natural, instead of something where maybe you're searching outside of your network of people and putting yourself in a situation where maybe you're a little bit more forced to meet a quota.
Right. No, I love it. It's a really good way of looking at it. So thank you for that. All right. So managing growth. This is something, you start a business and you think, I just want to grow, right? That's it. I just want to grow. And then you start growing and you go, oh my God, what's happening? Right?
Yeah.
So tell us, what are your tips for this? How do you manage growth?
I mean, I think for us, I'll just come back to a balanced dashboard. Everybody talks about KPIs. They're extremely relevant in any profession. And I think the more that we can come up with a balanced dashboard and ensure that we're doing certain things to measure quality control while we are growing, I think that's essential. So for us, it starts with Net Promoter Score. Net Promoter Score is kind of a gold standard customer service metric or brand loyalty metric. Can we grow, and can we either maintain or maybe even improve our Net Promoter Score? So for us, we've kind of gone back and forth between a 93 or 94 Net Promoter Score, which is, to be honest, it's world class. So every time we've been able to open up a location, we've been able to maintain that same expectation and brand loyalty that people have come to expect, say, at our Frederick location. Churn rate is another big one. If we have people that are interacting with our business and they're quickly dropping off, that being something where expectations surrounding their experience are not being met. And then there's other things associated with things like, whether or not it's productivity, billing metric. We could get into the healthcare oriented side of the house where we're looking at outcomes measures associated with, say, a lower extremity or low back. There's customer satisfaction metrics, pain level improvements, goals met. There's certain things that people are filling out regularly on an iPad within their interactions with our company, either at the front desk or back with their PTs. So we feel like our balanced dashboard really allows us to make sure that, it's one thing to grow and maybe just continue to get people in, but how well are you taking care of the people that are coming in? And then how is that leading and carrying on to them referring you, that word of mouth network that I think everybody talks about that's essential.
Right. You could see I'm taking notes because so much of this I'm thinking about that we come in and we don't think about, but it is important when you're growing your business to start thinking about these things and probably even before you start, right? I am not one, I'm one who jumps in with both feet, before the idea is completely out of my head. So I am one to, really talk about this because I'm not good at that. I am not good at planning what's going to come next. I get into it and I go, what's happening here? Right. So I think it's important that we start talking about that. I want to move on to your ideas of leadership and creating autonomy within your group. We've got two different parts of this, but you do a great job with this. You believe in not necessarily having a hierarchical build in your business. So what do you do?
Yeah, I mean, the organization chart looks a lot more like a circle than a pyramid. Right? There's not a boss, so to speak, and that really, if you take that parallel and then also look at the patient and clinician role, like there's a lot more of a mutual respect there. We would consider ourselves more guides and consultants rather than maybe the model that people are used to from a medical standpoint, where you have this medical professional you're interacting with, and then they are talking potentially down to you, or they're directing things to you. There's a lot more synergy in the relationship. So when I look at what a more circular organization chart looks like, it puts people in a situation where they're all having some level of ownership. They do have the ability to make decisions based on the framework given to them, which gives them a sense of ownership. They feel more empowered. I think it's a lot easier for them to be engaged in the workplace. And then, to be quite honest, it allows us to move quicker, right? Knowing that we are focusing on progress over perfection, and that anytime that something maybe goes wrong from a decision-making standpoint, we just revert back to not necessarily that person, but the manner in which that they were empowered. So it really just changes a lot of the conversations. It allows us to continually tweak the guardrails that people are functioning under. And I think the level of empowerment that members of our staff have make the workplace a lot more enjoyable. And to be quite honest, I can rest the fact on that we were just named to Inc. Best Workplaces. So the Inc. magazine Best Workplaces, and our level of empowerment that the team self-rated on the metrics that they used was definitely something that stood out.
That's amazing. That's really, congratulations on that. That's
Thank you.
really great.
Mhm.
So, and you talked a little bit, well, before we got on, you talked a little bit about taking ownership of your work, taking ownership in the company. So tell me a little bit, because I loved what you had to say about creation and what your team is creating there. So tell me a little bit about how you do this.
Yeah, I mean, I think my job, I think it really starts probably with me. My job when people come into the team is to serve them. How can I create a workplace environment that they enjoy? How can I create a workplace environment that allows them to improve themselves? And I think this is kind of back to that conscious capitalism situation where we are serving our stakeholders instead of specifically focused on shareholders. So if our stakeholders are the people on our team, how do we make sure that we're serving them? So when I bring somebody new onto our team, it is, hey, what would you like to do with regards to the progression of your career? So we had people come in the past year and say, hey, I want to specialize in concussions. All right, so my job is to literally start thinking about how can we build out this concussion program and facilitate this person and position them in a role where they have some thought leadership. They have a program that they can put their name on. We have a golf fitness program that we just came out with. We're working on a podcast. Like there's certain things that members of our team have literally said, hey, this would make work more enjoyable, or hey, this is something that I've had on my mind that I would like to do. So my job automatically becomes, okay, how do I serve this individual's needs, interests, where they want to take their career? You know, we just did a checkpoint at the end of quarter two. Obviously, it was a little bit crazy in quarter two. We got through quarter two instead of maybe we're focusing on what we wanted to do. Our goals at the beginning of quarter one might not necessarily have been things we were able to work on. We showed our capacity in quarter two, but how do we reframe quarter three, quarter four, and make sure that the company and that individual are working hand in hand to reach whatever goals they set out for at the beginning of the year. So servant leadership and really getting back to the fact that your more senior people or your highest position people do still need to focus on serving everybody and ideally putting them in a situation where they have something that they can say, hey, this is mine and I'm in control of ensuring that it's successful.
Yeah. And I think it's so important because it makes you, if you take that ownership, if you have your employees take that ownership, it makes them more likely to stay with you. It makes them more likely to want to be a part of it and to grow. And then they see your success as their success, right? Yep. So that's a big thing. I'm going to switch gears again, and I want to go back to what you actually do at Rehab to Perform. And I want to go back to it because I was just sitting here thinking, I've kind of gone, we talked before about Rehab to Perform. Do you just work with athletes, right? And you said, no, we work kind of all over. And because your performance, it depends on you, right? And I started thinking while I was sitting here that I'm trying to remember the year. So my son was 2, so it had to have been 2008. He got swine flu. And at the time he was 2. It was very, very scary. He was in the hospital, and the kid next to us in the next room had swine flu. And I had been training for marathons and Ironman and all of these things for all these years. So I was very fit. And the mother next to me, they were taking care of the mother next to me more than they were having to take care of the kid because she wasn't taking care of herself. Well, now fast forward, I own a business, right? My kid was important to me. It was important that I was in shape so I could take care of my child. It's just as important that entrepreneurs take care of themselves so that they can take care of their business, right? So what are those things people are skipping? What are those things that they should be doing? Whether, we're not necessarily exercise, but things they're living with pain that they shouldn't be. And how much better could their life be? So I want to let you address that, how you guys work to help people perform, not just in athletics, but in their life as a leader.
Yeah, I mean, I think a big part, it's probably 2 things. One, people struggle with new routine and really creating some kind of a new routine. So sometimes working with people on ensuring that as a result of our interactions, they're able to find easy to implement and efficient ways of working towards this goal that they have. Because maybe they've been stuck because they view it just to be something that is so significantly burdensome. I think another thing is really putting measurable items out in front of people. I think the more that we measure, the more that we are going to find ourselves managing things. But sometimes people don't know how to actually measure improvements with regards to fitness. It could be certain competencies. It could be certain capacities, things that are more measurable that allow them to be in the driver's seat with, oh, okay, this is what I'm working towards. People tell me I need to be fit, but what does being fit actually look like? If I'm a runner, what things might matter in terms of prerequisites to running? So I always call ourselves consultants. You come to us, you have a problem. We have this idea of what our endpoint is. How do we work backwards from that? We call it like reverse engineering. And then we come up with a needs analysis. So we have a needs analysis for this individual, and we start finding ways to address some of these items. We could almost look at that as a school curriculum. We're rolling through some of these elementary school level items. They're very basic competencies or capacities, and we start to build on them as we eventually get to a point where we'll call it graduation day. So ideally by graduation day, this person has a new routine. They have a lot better idea of how they might accommodate or adjust to certain injuries or just certain ways of training. And they're a lot more empowered to be an active part of the decision-making process as it relates to their routine or things that they're doing on a regular basis.
So yeah, that is great. And I think it is, I love it because you do, I remember going in and saying, so I have this foot problem and, and what we focus on was the foot problem instead of focusing on the fact that I needed to get back to what I was doing and I needed to get back strong. Just taking time off, straight time off was awful. It's like, and then I was going to be so far behind. So having a goal and saying, this is how we're going to measure this to get through would have been a wonderful way to do it.
Rest is so underwhelming. We just sit here and it's like we're waiting for this, like all of a sudden, like magically better. And that's where you get into a situation where I think our profession, and sometimes people associate our profession so much just with pain, and we lose sight of the fact that and this is where we get into you've got 4 quadrants, right? So you've got injury being quadrant 1, you have traditional PT in quadrant 2, which I think really just focuses on pain and getting people back to baseline. Quadrant 3 is really where the sweet spot is. So how do I make sure that I'm building out a routine and this transition where this person starts to do things at a little bit of a higher level, and we're sure that they're going to return to prior level function. We talk a lot about return to prior level function in PT, but oftentimes the focus and the narratives are just on feeling better instead of getting back to prior level function, which the functional side of things is whatever matters to you from a performance standpoint. You could be an occupational athlete. We work with police officers, SWAT, fire, right? Those are people that need to perform. We have people that are older and they want to do certain things with their kids. They need to perform certain tasks to be able to engage with and enjoy the social component to their lives. So performance can look a lot different. And I think when you look at our facility and how we try to work with people, it's more that athlete's mindset, right? How can I get one day better? We have a quote inside. It's called "Be greater than yesterday." So how do we ideally put people in a mindset that they're creating these new routines? And when in the beginning, you might need motivation, but when you have routines and habit, motivation becomes something that you need less and less and less. It just becomes a part of who you are. So that really is it's a multifactorial way to ideally leave people in a better position and talk about and address a lot more than just pain.
Right. That's great. Well, and, and we sit here, we think, I don't have time. I don't have time to be sick. I don't have time to be injured. Well, it's not going to get better. It's not just going to get better on its own. And if you eventually have to, go have surgery on your hip because you didn't take care of yourself to that point, that you just let it get worse and worse and worse, then what are you solving for your team? You have a responsibility as a leader to take care of yourself. So I think, I think you're a good place to have there. I want to ask you how people find you. So I know they can go to rehab2perform.com. But where are you currently? You're in Frederick?
We have Frederick, Germantown, Mount Airy, and Bethesda. And
Okay.
we are working on opening our 5th location at some point, either this fall or this winter. And then our 6th location should be ready by March of 2021. So we're very, very close to major roadways. We're less than a mile off major roadways. So I know I say Bethesda, but people keep telling me it's like more like North Bethesda. And then any of the other ways, like right off 270, right off 70. We do accept almost all major medical insurances. So getting back to the whole inclusive side of the house, though we offer a high level of service, we also are available to a lot of people as well.
That's awesome. All right. So let me go through what we've got coming up next, just so everybody knows. We have gone to Mondays and Wednesdays now. Once in a while, there'll be a Friday thrown in. But on Wednesday, we have Jarod Spiewak of Blue Dog Media. He's going to be talking about processes. I think that, so many of us say, oh, I just really need to put some processes in place. He's going to talk about how to do that and how to automate some of it so that you're not always doing the same thing over and over again. Actually, one of the things we do here, this is such a small thing, but everything we do that leads up to somebody, I guess, showing up is a process. It is automated. It is really easy for us to get things done. I want to remind everybody to please subscribe. I want you to subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening to it. But if you are watching this right now, I'm asking you to please go over to youtube.com/BrendaandAnnie and subscribe. It's so easy and it will do us a big favor. We're going to share this on everything: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, anywhere you can find it. We're going to share it multiple times. We'll probably break it into bits so you guys can catch it if you've missed the whole thing, but please keep on the lookout for it. And how do we do all of this? Well, we own ASMM Digital Marketing, and you can find us at ASMMdigital.com. We make it easy for you to get your message out there. And we have a campus. So if you don't have the funds to hire somebody to do your marketing for you, you can go to our campus and learn how to do it yourself. We want to help you. So I hope you're doing well, guys. Let me say goodbye. Josh, this has been wonderful. I'm really glad you came on. This was a lot of fun. And actually, let me tell everybody how we met. We met through the Bethesda Chevy Chase neighborhood group, basically. So this is a great way. If you guys aren't doing that, please do.
Yes.
Go and check out who your neighbors are.
Right?
Yeah. Exactly. And how do you help each other? So that's what I went on. I went on and said, hey, I'm looking for people who own businesses locally. I want to be on a podcast. And Josh came on. So that was great. So, all right, Josh, thank you so much for coming on. This has been great. All right, hold on one second.